a crisis advocate with the Friendship Center, and I'm here at the Friendship Center working in the office. And my co-host today, or my co-facilitator today, is working from home. Do you want to go ahead, Gina?
Yeah, so I'm Gina Baysdorfer, and I am the Client Care Director and Operations Manager with the Friendship Center, and I generally help co-host our support group with Chelsea.
Awesome. So welcome to week 2, our virtual version of support group. And so this will be the week 2 sexual assault. And so last week we shared a couple resources, really basic resources about domestic violence and a general overview of that. And we'll kind of be doing the same thing this week with sexual assault. So if this is a tough topic for you, we would just encourage you to take care of yourself. And that if this is something that you're just not ready for, that's okay. And something that you're wanting to participate in, and afterwards you need a little extra help, please reach out to a friend, a family member, therapist, a hotline. Please don't hesitate to call the Friendship Center. We have an advocate available 24/7 to talk. So we really appreciate you being here to view this. So if you're ready, Gina, we can dive right in to a real basic definition of what is sexual assault. The term sexual assault refers to contact or behavior that occurs without explicit consent of the victim. So some forms of sexual assault include attempted rape, fondling or unwanted sexual touching, forcing a victim to perform sexual acts such as oral sex, penetrating the victim's body with the perpetrator's body part, which is also known as rape. So one thing this definition does not mention is coercion. So we know coercion plays a huge part in a lot of sexual assaults that we hear about. And so coercion is defined as pressuring, threatening, or manipulating someone into sex.
Yeah, and I think the coercion is something specifically with sexual assault that we see so frequently within relationships. So a lot of times people don't necessarily consider sexual assault or rape as something that can happen within the context of a relationship, but we actually see it very, very frequently in relationships that are abusive and have some of those unhealthy dynamics and tendencies in them. And usually when we see those sexual assaults, sometimes they are very explicit sexual assaults that occur, but a lot of times it is through that coercion. So the partner pestering somebody until they finally say yes and give in, even though they don't really want to engage in that act in the first place. Maybe there's some guilt, manipulation, some threats involved. Perhaps somebody really doesn't feel safe saying no because they think it will increase or escalate violence, or there's going to be some other consequence to saying no. And sometimes there could be that underlying belief system of once you're in a relationship or in a marriage that you are not able to say no, that consent is kind of forever given in any circumstance, and that's not true. And sexual assault and rape are illegal under the law, even within those relationships. So the law also does not recognize that just because you're married with somebody or cohabitating or anything like that, that you have somehow given forever consent, so to speak.
Right, and I think that's a common misconception with some of the public, and so it's great to say that as well. And I think a lot falls under the definition of sexual assault, and we know that sexual assault is a very, complicated and gray area when it comes to, I guess, the legal system. To us, it's very black and white on what is, a violation of those boundaries and what is not. But when it comes to the law, it can be really confusing to weed through some of those definitions and whatnot. So that's where we want to share our first resource. So we wanted to share www.rainn, which is spelled RAINN.org. And it's a very important resource. This website does a really good job of defining some of those hard terms, and it's dedicated as a service to sexual assault victims.
I think this is a really great website for folks to look at. They have a wide variety of information. They have information that is very targeted towards victims and survivors of sexual assault, and so resources for them, education for them. It has information for general community, victim service providers, and they also have a hotline that includes a chat and messaging feature. And so you can use them as an advocacy source. Let's say you're perusing their website, it brings up some intense feelings or emotions, or even just questions maybe about what you've been through and your experience. And so you can, in that moment, just hop on their chat feature, call their hotline, etc., and really speak with someone in that moment about what you're going through and some of the information that you're learning about. And they can also help connect you to local resources as well. And of course, the Friendship Center is always open as a resource any time of day or night, holidays, weekends, etc., to provide a lot of that information or have those same conversations around, this was my experience and I don't know what that means, or I felt really taken advantage of, but I don't know whether or not it can be considered rape or sexual assault, or, maybe you had an experience and it's just being brought back up by something recently, or you saw your offender recently and were surprised at some of the emotions that came up with that. And so we can help process. Also, occasionally, if, folks are maybe interested in reporting and they hadn't reported before and they think, well, I missed my chance, I didn't get a kit done, I can't report this now. That's not true. You still have that as an option. And so we can help talk with people about what their options are going forward, whether or not they want to report, and what that can look like, to include, again, that emotional aspect. So I think RAINN is a really awesome resource because it does have such a wide variety. They also have some information about like public policy and safety and prevention and things like that as well. So they really encompass a gamut of information that people can look at and learn from.
Yeah. Just going off of what you said, Gina, about processing that experience, we know that some survivors don't remember their experience, and they remember it later on in life. So just as adding on to all of those reasons why sexual assault is so complicated and so hard, it can be so hard to work through. All right. So just getting into off of sexual assault and getting into the definition of consent. Consent is defined as giving permission for something to happen or in agreement to do something. So in the context, when it comes to when it comes to relationships and when it comes to sex, it means talking openly with your partner about what you're comfortable with and what you are not comfortable with. And some of that can be, you might not know what you're comfortable with yet, right? So that's where consent is very valuable, when it's important to know that it's something that can be given at any point and taken away. So maybe that's something that you thought you were comfortable with and you quickly realize you are not. So that is within your right as a person to take that consent away and say, you know what, I'm actually not okay with that. And it is your right to change your mind. I think that's important for folks to hear.
I think it's important to know too that consent is given every single time and every step of the way. And so just because maybe you consented at one point in the past or to a specific act, but maybe right now you're not feeling it, or you're not in the mood, or that's not something you want to do anymore, you have the right to say no to that. And so understanding that you can, like Chelsea said, you can take it back at any time, and also that it needs to be given freely every single time. And so if you are thinking back to coercion, if you feel like you're being pressured into it because you fear some of the consequences, or just because you don't feel like, you've said no, or you've said you're not into it, and you keep being relentlessly pressured. And so you're like, fine, whatever, just to make this stop, let's do it. That's not actually consent. You're not giving that freely. It's something that you're not into in that moment that you are being pressured in to give. And so knowing that you have the ability to really decide what's right for you and whether or not you are okay with something. And just because you might have technically said yes or participated in that event, that doesn't necessarily mean it was consensual. And so exactly what Chelsea said, to trust your gut on that. And a lot of the conversations that we have with our clients is around consent and what that experience might mean for somebody. And so somebody might call us and say, this is what happened and I'm feeling really confused about it. Something felt not right or off, or maybe unsafe, and I just want to talk through what that means. And we are never going to define somebody's experience for them, but we can absolutely have the conversation around, this is what consent looks like, this is what a sexual assault consists of, and how does that fit with your experience, and what do you think it is? I think something else that's important to mention is that feelings around that can be very confusing. And so it's not unusual after a sexual assault to at one moment feel very certain that that's what happened, and then another moment to feel very uncertain about that, or to be really angry at one point, very sad another time, to feel like maybe you've put it behind you and that you've processed it, and then at a later date feel like you're back at square one. And so all of those emotions and that back and forth and that up and down is really very common, because these are very complicated issues, and sexual assault nearly always occurs because of a relationship with somebody that we have some form of relationship with. So a current or former partner, an acquaintance, a coworker, a classmate, somebody that and there's usually some underlying level of trust with that has been violated. And so that adds a layer to it that can make it feel very confusing, and really contribute to that back and forth and that up and down with some of those feelings.
Yeah, that's really, really good information. And when it comes to defining and explaining consent and healthy relationships, we love using the resource loveisrespect.org. So we'll share that below. It's an amazing resource. They too have a chat feature as well as a text feature. So if you are wanting to remain anonymous, Helena is a small community. We do understand that, when seeking resources, that is a barrier for some folks. And so that's why we think these chat resources are so important. And Love is Respect is a great educational resource, but it's also a supportive website for survivors of sexual assault. And so I just wanted to share that there is a couple different things under here for support as far as safety planning, support systems, and self-care goes. So that is under the Get Help tab. And then, we know that 1 in 3 women are affected by sexual violence in their lifetime, and nearly 1 in 4 men are. So with those statistics being so high, it is very likely that someone in your life, or possibly you that have experienced sexual assault or sexual violence of some form. So what I think is really great about this resource is that it helps you support those in your life who have been affected by sexual violence. So under the Get Help tab, there's a little tab there that says for someone else, and it lists roles of people in your life, such as a coworker or a friend, a parent, a roommate, and the list goes on. But it gives very detailed, individualized profiles on, how you can best help and safety plan with that person. So it also just gives important tips on what to say and what not to say, as far as letting that person know that it is not their fault that they had experienced this, no matter what the circumstances were. And then also, very importantly, just keeping that person's confidentiality, that they just disclose something to you that was very private to them, and it's their story to tell and not yours. So just kind of maintaining that trust with that support person as well.
I think Love is Respect is really a great resource. We really refer to it a lot when we're doing outreach events, when we're talking with clients, anything like that. They have wonderful resources on healthy relationships, sexual assault. They have quizzes that people can take to help figure out some of those dynamics within their relationship or with some experiences that they have had. Like Chelsea said, it also can help provide resources for friends or family members that might be going through this or something similar. And they do have those support features with their text and their chat. I also think it's really important to come back to that confidentiality piece for friends and family. You know, if somebody is disclosing to you, how important it is that you keep that information to yourself so that you are a safe and trusted person. And also just reminding everyone that we at the Friendship Center have advocate privilege, and so that anything you share with us is protected by confidentiality. So if you talk with us about an experience that you have had, or even if you have a friend or a family member who has experienced any of these forms of violence and you're looking for support for yourself for how to cope with hearing that information and supporting your friend, but also for some strategies on how to support your friend, we can definitely be a resource for that. And your information is completely protected. We are mandatory reporters, so there are some very small exceptions, or there are few exceptions to that, but there are some. And so we can definitely have a conversation around those so that you are informed about what information you want to share. But we are that safe resource where you can talk to us and not worry that when you go out to a restaurant or into, you know, a store in town, that somebody is going to know that information that you shared with us. And so that's something that we take very seriously here, and is also a state law protection. And so it's a very solid protection that we have at the Friendship Center.
Yeah. And so in wrapping this week 2 session up, we just want to remind everyone that if you were the victim of some form of sexual violence, that you are not alone, that there is help, just a text or a phone call away. And we know it can be hard to talk about these topics, but an advocate is available when you're ready. And just like Gina said, we take our confidentiality very seriously. And so, yeah, your story is important to us, and we are here to help.
So we can be reached through our crisis line and our office line at 406-442-6800. We are open on that crisis line 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, holidays, evening, weekends, just always there as a support in case you need it. So please reach out. We miss having our office open. We miss having our support group in person, and we miss seeing our clients face to face. So we're really excited for the day when we get to open back up. And in the meantime, please know that we're still here. We're still providing services. You can still reach us.
Awesome. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. And we hope you found this helpful. Thanks.
Bye.